The house on West Superior Street was everything a lifestyle magazine would approve of: clean lines, pale wood floors, a glass staircase that caught the afternoon light like a frozen wave. Marcus Hale sometimes stood in the doorway longer than necessary, studying it as if it belonged to someone else. Evelyn had chosen the house. She chose most things that required taste. The neutral color palette, the abstract art that suggested emotion without ever naming it, the curated bookshelves that made visitors believe they were well read in exactly the right way. Marcus had signed the checks and told himself that was a kind of participation. On Thursday evenings, they ate dinner together because that was what married couples did. Tonight, it was salmon, perfectly seared, untouched by excess seasoning. Evelyn sat across from him, her phone face down for once, her posture elegant, even in silence. "You're quiet," she said, not looking up. "I had a long day," Marcus replied. That was true, though not complete. His firm had landed a major redevelopment project near the river, the kind of win that should have made him feel triumphant. Instead, it left him hollow, like applause echoing in an empty theater. Evelyn nodded, satisfied enough with the answer. She reached for her wineglass, the faint clink against the table, sharp in the stillness. Her wedding ring caught the light, thin, tasteful, expensive. Marcus noticed details like that more these days. He noticed everything and said almost nothing. Later that night, Evelyn fell asleep quickly, her back turned toward him. Marcus lay awake, listening to the city hum beyond the windows, sirens, laughter from the street below, life continuing with or without them. He scrolled through his phone, absently, stopping on Evelyn's Instagram profile. A new post from earlier that afternoon. Client meetings and coffee, that's way too strong, #hustle life. The photo showed her smiling in a cafe, sunlight softening her features. Marcus recognized the place, an independent shop in River North. He had passed it countless times. He zoomed in without thinking. In the reflection of the window behind her, barely visible unless you were looking for it, was a man's shoulder. Close. Intimate. Marcus stared longer than he should have. A rational part of him offered explanations. A coworker, a stranger, a coincidence. Another part, the one that had been quietly collecting moments for months, felt a cold, settling certainty. He put the phone down and closed his eyes. Over the next few days, nothing changed on the surface. Evelyn kissed him goodbye in the mornings, asked about his projects, complained about clients who didn't understand branding. Marcus answered where necessary, conserved energy where it wasn't. On Monday, he left work early for the first time in years. He didn't plan to go to River North. His car simply turned there, as if memory had taken the wheel. The cafe was busy, all glass and chatter. He stood across the street, feeling faintly ridiculous. Then, he saw her. Evelyn sat by the window, her body angled toward a man Marcus had never seen before. Younger, relaxed. His hand rested on the table close enough to brush hers. She laughed at something he said, a real laugh, unguarded, unpolished. Marcus felt something inside him go very still. He didn't storm across the street. He didn't take photos or call her name. He watched as the man leaned in, their heads close, their world narrowed to the space between them. That was when Evelyn looked up and saw him. For a fraction of a second, her face lost all color. The cafe noise seemed to drain away, leaving only the thud of Marcus's heart. Their eyes met through the glass. Husband and wife strangers in the same frame. Marcus held her gaze, then he smiled. It wasn't bitter, it wasn't kind, it was calm, controlled, almost gentle. The kind of smile you give when you finally understand something you've been avoiding for years. He turned and walked away. Behind the glass, Evelyn sat frozen, the echo of that smile burning into her mind, already knowing, though she wouldn't admit it for a long time, that nothing in her life would ever feel the same again. The discovery did not arrive with drama or thunder. It slipped into Marcus Hale's life the way most irreversible things did. Quietly, almost politely, asking for nothing at all. It happened on a Sunday morning, the kind designed for forgiveness. Pale winter light filtered through the kitchen windows, dust floating lazily above the marble island. Evelyn was still asleep upstairs. Marcus stood barefoot, nursing a mug of coffee that had gone cold, scrolling through emails he pretended were urgent. Her phone buzzed on the counter. He noticed it only because it didn't stop. Once, twice, again. The screen lit up with a name he didn't recognize. Noah W. Last night was a mistake. Or maybe it wasn't. Marcus stared at the screen as if it might blink first. His initial reaction was irritation. Why hadn't she silenced it? Evelyn was usually meticulous about things like that. Control was her language. He told himself to look away. He even turned slightly, taking a step toward the sink. But the phone buzzed again, insistent, impatient. I can't stop thinking about you. Marcus picked it up. The glass was warm, as if it had been waiting for his hand. He didn't unlock it at first. He stood there, heart steady to the point of numbness, staring at the reflection of his own face in the black screen. 40 years old next spring, architect, husband, a man who believed until very recently that knowing the blueprint meant understanding the structure. The phone vibrated again. A preview slid down. Tell me when I can see you again. His thumb moved before he consciously decided to let it. The passcode was still their anniversary. That fact hurt more than the messages. There was no single incriminating photo, no explicit declaration that screamed betrayal. It was worse than that. It was intimacy disguised as restraint. Late-night texts, voice notes sent during Marcus's meetings, a shared calendar reminder labeled simply Thursday. A thread of desire woven carefully between professional language and private longing. Marcus sat down at the kitchen table. He read, slowly, methodically, as if reviewing plans for a building that had already collapsed. The man Noah Whitman, according to the contact info, worked in communications, media strategy, consulting. Evelyn had mentioned him once, months ago, dismissively, just someone the firm brought in. Marcus now saw the progression with painful clarity. Polite collaboration, compliments about her insight, jokes that didn't need to be shared. Eventually, a line crossed so gently it barely left a mark. One message stopped him completely. I've never felt this seen before. Evelyn had written that. Marcus closed his eyes. Upstairs, the shower turned on. Water rushed through the pipes loud and careless. Evelyn humming faintly. A normal morning soundtrack, now grotesque in its familiarity. He locked the phone and placed it back exactly where he'd found it, aligning it carefully with the edge of the counter. His hands were steady. That surprised him. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He didn't rehearse speeches in his head. Instead, he opened his laptop and searched Noah Whitman. The internet offered him efficiently curated truths. 32, graduate of Northwestern, recently divorced. A smile too practiced to be innocent. LinkedIn endorsements praising his emotional intelligence and ability to connect. Marcus felt a flicker of something sharp, quickly suppressed. Evelyn came downstairs wrapped in a robe, hair damp, face bare and softer than the version the world knew. She kissed his cheek, lingering for half a second too long. Morning, she said. Morning. She poured herself coffee, scrolling through her phone without glancing at him. Marcus watched her expression carefully. There it was, a tiny hesitation. A pause that didn't belong to the rhythm of habit. She knew. The rest of the day unfolded with surgical normalcy. They discussed groceries. Evelyn complained about an upcoming client pitch. Marcus nodded in the right places. Silence filled the spaces where affection used to live, and neither of them acknowledged it. That afternoon, Marcus drove aimlessly through the city. Past the firm, past the gym he barely used anymore, past the cafe in River North where laughter now meant something else entirely. He parked across the street. Inside, the same glass walls reflected lives intersecting and diverging without consequence. He told himself he was ridiculous for being there. He told himself this wasn't proof, just confirmation. Then Evelyn walked in. She wasn't alone. Noah stood when he saw her, his smile unguarded. He leaned in to kiss her cheek, not hurried, not secretive enough to be innocent. Evelyn's hand brushed his arm, a gesture so natural Marcus wondered how long it had been practiced. They sat close. Too close. Marcus felt something in his chest fold inward, not violently, but decisively. This was not suspicion. This was clarity. Evelyn laughed, tilting her head the way she did when she felt admired. Marcus realized then how rarely she laughed like that at home. When had that stopped? Had he noticed? Had he chosen not to? Time slowed into something viscous. He could see details with cruel precision. The way Noah listened, leaning forward. The way Evelyn mirrored his posture. The way her phone lay forgotten on the table. Then she looked up. Their eyes met. Recognition hit her like a physical blow. Marcus saw it all unfold across her face. Shock, fear, calculation. Her body stiffened, but she didn't stand. She didn't wave. She simply stared, caught between two worlds, neither of which felt safe anymore. Marcus stood there, hands in his coat pockets, breathing evenly. In another life, he might have crossed the street, might have said her name loud enough to shatter glass, might have demanded answers he already had. Instead, he smiled. It wasn't planned. It arrived fully formed, calm, and unsettling. A smile stripped of hope, anger, and performance. A smile that said, "I see you, and I am done asking why." He turned and walked away. He didn't hear Evelyn call after him. If she did, that night Marcus slept alone in the guest room for the first time in 12 years. Evelyn didn't knock. She didn't apologize. Silence expanded between them, thick and irreversible. And somewhere deep inside her, though she would not admit it, not then, not for years, Evelyn felt the echo of that smile settle into her bones. It was the beginning of everything ending. The smile followed Evelyn Hale home. It clung to her like the smell of smoke after a fire, faint, persistent, impossible to ignore. Even hours later, even after she had showered and changed and reapplied the version of herself she showed the world, it lingered behind her eyes. Marcus had not called. That fact unnerved her more than any shouted accusation ever could. She sat alone in the living room long after midnight, the lights dimmed to a level that felt appropriately penitential. Her phone lay face up on the coffee table, no messages, no missed calls. Marcus's silence pressed against her chest heavier than words. She replayed the moment over and over, the cafe window, the glass between them, his stillness, and then the smile. It hadn't been cruel. That was what terrified her. There was no bitterness in it, no wounded masculinity, no drama she could grasp and respond to. It was composed, almost kind, as if he had reached the end of a thought long in progress, as if she had been late to her own trial. Evelyn closed her eyes and leaned back against the couch. For the first time in months, maybe longer, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of what she had done. Not as a story she could spin, but as a fact. She thought of Noah, how easily it had started. A glance held a second too long, a compliment that landed exactly where Marcus's silence had hollowed her out. Noah had seen her, at least that was how it felt. Or maybe he had simply looked. With Marcus, everything had become so managed. Conversations scheduled between meetings. Affection rationed like a resource. Love reduced to logistics. She had told herself this was what long marriages became, that wanting more was immature. Now she wasn't sure what she had wanted at all. Her phone buzzed. Evelyn flinched. It was Noah. Did he say anything? Her fingers hovered above the screen. For once, she didn't know what answer would preserve the illusion. She typed, deleted. Typed again. He saw us. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. What did he do? She swallowed. Nothing. That was when panic truly set in. Noah called immediately. She let it ring twice before answering. What do you mean, nothing? He asked, his voice tight. He smiled, she said. Saying it aloud made it sound unreal. And he walked away. There was a pause. That's not good. No, Evelyn whispered. It's not. After they hung up, she stared at her reflection in the darkened television screen. She looked intact, beautiful even, no visible signs of collapse, but something inside her had shifted irrevocably. Marcus came home the next evening without warning. Evelyn heard the door open, the quiet thud of his shoes by the entryway. She stood too quickly, smoothing her sweater, rehearsing words that tangled in her throat. He walked past her as if she were furniture. "Marcus," she said. He stopped, but didn't turn around. Her voice cracked. She hated that. "We need to talk." He considered this for a moment. When he finally faced her, his expression was unreadable. Calm, controlled, worse than anger. "Do we?" he asked. "Yes," she said immediately. "We do." He studied her face the way he studied blueprints, searching for structural integrity. Finally, he nodded once. "Not tonight." And then he went upstairs. She followed him halfway, stopping when she heard the guest room door close. The click of the latch sounded final. That night, Evelyn lay awake in their bed, staring at the ceiling Marcus had helped design, counting the faint shadows cast by passing headlights. She imagined him in the next room, perfectly still, his mind doing what it always did, sorting, concluding, deciding. She wanted him to yell, to accuse her, to demand explanations she had practiced offering. Instead, he gave her nothing. The next days unfolded in a careful choreography of avoidance. Marcus left early, returned late. When they crossed paths, he was polite, neutral. He spoke to her the way one spoke to a colleague whose contract was ending. "How was your day?" "Fine." "Dinner?" "I ate already." The smile never reappeared. That was almost worse. Evelyn began to dread quiet moments. She filled them with noise, news podcasts, background television, the hum of the espresso machine. Silence had become hostile territory. At work, she made mistakes, small ones, but noticeable. She snapped at interns, forgot deadlines. Her carefully maintained image began to fray at the edges, and she felt powerless to stop it. At night, she scrolled through old photos of her and Marcus, vacations, anniversaries, smiling faces that looked convincingly happy. She searched for clues, signs of distance she might have missed. What haunted her most was not being caught, it was being understood. The smile suggested Marcus had known on some level that this was possible, that her betrayal had not shattered him, it had confirmed something. One evening, she found him in the kitchen, pouring himself a glass of water. "I ended it," she said abruptly. He paused, then continued pouring. "Ended what?" "You know what." He turned to face her, glass in hand. "I'm not sure I do." Her breath hitched. "Noah, it's over." "Is it?" he asked, not unkindly. "Yes," she said louder than necessary, "because I don't want to lose you." Something flickered across his face then. Not hope, something closer to fatigue. "You didn't lose me," Marcus said quietly. "You stepped away." "That's not fair." "No," he agreed, "it isn't." She waited for more. It didn't come. "Why won't you fight for us?" she demanded, desperation sharpening her tone. He met her gaze fully now. For a moment, she thought she saw the ghost of the smile, the echo of that calm, devastating understanding. "Because I already did," he said. "For years. I just didn't know I was alone." She covered her mouth with her hand, tears finally breaking free. Marcus watched her cry with an expression that held no triumph. He turned and left the room. Long after his footsteps faded, Evelyn remained where she was, realizing with a clarity that bordered on terror. Anger could have been survived, but that smile would stay with her forever. The house changed its nature after the smile. It did not grow loud with arguments or shatter under slammed doors. Instead, it became unnervingly quiet, like a place preserved after an evacuation, every object intact, every room holding the impression of lives abruptly interrupted. Marcus moved into the guest room without ceremony. No announcement, no discussion. One evening, Evelyn noticed his clothes missing from their shared closet, the empty hangers aligned with his habitual precision. The absence felt deliberate, architectural, a structural decision, not an emotional one. That frightened her. Silence had always been Evelyn's enemy. She understood conflict, how to manage it, how to shape narratives from it. Silence, however, refused to cooperate. It did not explain itself. It simply existed, demanding interpretation. She began to interpret everything. The way Marcus rinsed his mug and set it in the drying rack without comment. The way he no longer asked about her day. The way his phone never faced down anymore, as if he had nothing to hide and nothing to protect. They passed each other in hallways like acquaintances with shared rent. Polite nods, brief acknowledgments, conversations reduced to logistics. I'll be late on Wednesday. There's a package at the door. The utility bill came. Evelyn waited for the breaking point that never arrived. At night, she lay alone in their bed, listening for sounds from the guest room. Movement, a cough. Anything that might suggest Marcus was struggling as much as she was. But he slept quietly, efficiently. That, too, felt like a verdict. Her guilt sharpened into something volatile. She imagined him replaying the cafe scene, the texts, the betrayal, just as she did. But Marcus gave no sign of rumination. He went to work. He cooked for himself. He lived. That was unbearable. Evelyn's mind filled the silence with theories. Perhaps he was planning something. Divorce papers delivered with the same calm as that smile? Or worse, perhaps he no longer cared enough to punish her. She began checking his movements without meaning to. Not spying exactly, more like confirming his existence. She noticed what time he left, what time he returned. She noticed when he showered, when he didn't. She noticed that he had started running again, early mornings before sunrise, coming back flushed and distant. One evening she asked, "Are you seeing someone?" The question escaped her before she could stop it. Marcus looked up from the book he was reading. He didn't appear surprised. If anything, he looked tired. "No," he said. "That's it?" she asked, hating the tremor in her voice. "That's the answer." She nodded, ashamed. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was now haunted by suspicions she had once justified inflicting. The house became a gallery of unresolved moments. The dining table where they used to eat together now served as neutral ground, rarely occupied by both at the same time. The couch where they had once watched movies in companionable silence now felt too intimate, like a relic from another era. Evelyn avoided certain rooms entirely. The study where Marcus used to work late nights. The guest bathroom now unmistakably his. Even the kitchen felt altered, stripped of its former warmth. She tried to reclaim normalcy through small gestures. Cooking his favorite meals, buying his preferred brand of coffee, leaving notes she never signed. Marcus accepted none of it and rejected none of it. He ate if he was hungry, drank the coffee if it was there. He never commented. That indifference hollowed her out. At work, her performance deteriorated. She found herself rereading emails without comprehension, missing cues she would normally catch instantly. Her colleagues noticed. "You okay?" her manager asked gently one afternoon. "Yes," Evelyn replied automatically. She was excellent at that word. Noah texted twice during those weeks. She didn't respond. His name on her screen felt obscene, now evidence of a desire she no longer trusted. At night, guilt manifested physically. Tightness in her chest, shallow breathing, a constant sense of being observed, judged by a jury that refused to convene. She wanted Marcus to accuse her, to label her wrongdoing clearly. Without accusation, her guilt had no shape. It expanded into everything. One Sunday morning, she found Marcus in the living room, sorting through old documents, blueprints, permits, folders labeled in his neat handwriting. "What are those?" she asked. "Old projects," he said. "Things I don't need anymore." Her heart skipped. "Are you leaving?" He considered the question carefully. "I'm simplifying." That word simplifying felt like erasure. "Marcus," she said, sitting across from him, "I can't do this. Not knowing what you're thinking, not knowing where we stand." He looked at her, then really looked at her. His gaze held no accusation, no longing, just clarity. "We stand where we are," he said. "Everything else is speculation." "That's not fair," she whispered. "I know." The conversation ended there, like all the others. Weeks passed. The seasons shifted subtly outside their windows. Evelyn began to feel as though she were living in a paused scene, waiting for a director to call action. One night, unable to sleep, she wandered into the guest room while Marcus was out for a late run. The room was spare, orderly. No personal photographs, No indulgence. On the nightstand lay a single notebook. She did not open it. She didn't need to. The restraint itself told her everything. Marcus was not avoiding confrontation because he was weak. He was withholding it because he no longer needed her understanding. The realization struck with devastating force. Their home, once a symbol of shared intention, had become a museum, each room a display of what they used to be. Each silence a placard explaining what could no longer be touched. And in that museum, Evelyn wandered alone, haunted not by what Marcus said, but by everything he refused to. To the outside world, nothing had changed. That Evelyn realized was the cruelest part. On social media, their life remained immaculate. The house still appeared in the background of carefully framed photos. The holidays still arrived on schedule. Marcus still stood beside her at events, tall and composed, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back, like a remembered habit rather than a promise. People mistook proximity for intimacy. Still, the dream couple. Someone commented under a photo from a charity gala. So inspiring, another wrote. Goals, a third added with a heart emoji. Evelyn stared at the screen until the words blurred. She wanted to scream that it was a lie, that the smile in the photo was not the smile that mattered. But she double-tapped the comments instead, rewarding the illusion with silent approval. Marcus had not asked her to keep up appearances. That was the unspoken rule of their new existence. Nothing was requested, nothing was denied. He simply participated when necessary, offering the version of himself the world expected. At dinners with friends, he was charming, attentive. He laughed at the right moments, told anecdotes from work, asked questions about other people's children, their renovations, their plans. Evelyn watched him perform with a mixture of awe and dread. She knew that version of Marcus well. She had once believed it was the real one. "You two seem so solid," her friend Claire said one evening, squeezing Evelyn's arm as Marcus stepped away to take a call. "It's rare, you know, long marriages like yours." Evelyn smiled reflexively. "We're lucky." The word tasted bitter. Later that night, she asked Marcus, "Why do you still come with me to these things?" He didn't hesitate. "Because it's easier." "For whom?" "For everyone," he said. Then more quietly, "Including you." She didn't argue. She knew he was right. At work, Marcus's reputation flourished. His focus sharpened, his projects growing bolder, cleaner. Colleagues praised his discipline, his clarity. They didn't see the cost. He stayed late not because he needed to, but because the office offered something home no longer did. Defined roles, predictable outcomes. Buildings, unlike marriages, responded to effort in measurable ways. Sometimes late at night, he sat alone in his office, staring out at the city lights, feeling a strange sense of duplication. There was the Marcus who existed in meetings and blueprints, efficient and admired, and there was the Marcus who returned to a house full of shared objects that no longer belonged to him in the same way. He did not confuse the two. Evelyn, however, lived in constant overlap. By day, she curated narratives, brands, identities, images that promised coherence. By night, she unraveled in small, contained ways. Long showers where she cried silently. Sleepless hours spent replaying conversations that never happened. She began to feel watched by her own reflection. At family gatherings, the performance intensified. Her mother complimented Marcus's recent project. Her father clapped him on the shoulder with approval. They spoke of future trips, future plans, as if time itself were a cooperative force. "You're thinking about kids yet?" her aunt asked over dessert. Evelyn froze. Marcus answered smoothly. "We're happy where we are," he said. It was a perfect response. True enough to pass, empty enough to avoid commitment. That night in the car, Evelyn asked, "Did you mean that?" "Yes," Marcus replied. "I meant we're not unhappy because of children." She turned toward the window, swallowing the rest of the question. Their double lives grew more complex with time. Marcus began seeing a therapist once a week, a fact he did not share with Evelyn. In that quiet room, he spoke aloud the thoughts he refused to give her, not out of cruelty, but preservation. He talked about betrayal without naming it, about loss without drama, about the moment something ends long before it's officially over. Evelyn, meanwhile, became adept at emotional compartmentalization. She learned how to laugh convincingly, how to desire nothing too deeply, how to keep Noah's memory sealed away, not as temptation, but as evidence of her own capacity for ruin. Occasionally, she wondered if Marcus had someone else after all. Not another woman, something worse. A future that no longer included her. The thought isolated her more than loneliness ever had. One evening, after a dinner party where they had been praised for their chemistry, Evelyn poured herself a drink and said quietly, "Do you ever feel like we're lying?" Marcus loosened his tie. "About what?" "About us." He considered this. "I think we're allowing people to believe what they need to believe." "And what do we need?" she asked. He met her gaze, his expression calm but impenetrable. Distance. The word landed between them, heavy and precise. That night, Evelyn posted a photo from the party. Marcus liked it within minutes. 2 people, 1 image, perfectly aligned. Behind the screen, behind the smiles, their marriage existed in fragments, publicly intact, privately in ruins. And the longer the illusion held, the harder it became to imagine an ending that didn't destroy them both. Evelyn learned the truth about Marcus by accident. It was a Tuesday evening, unremarkable in every way. Rain streaked down the windows in thin, impatient lines. Marcus was later than usual, and the house had settled into its familiar hush. Evelyn sat at the dining table with her laptop open, pretending to work, refreshing the same email thread without reading it. She needed something to anchor her. Anything. When Marcus finally came home, he looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with work. His coat was damp, his hair darker from the rain. He moved more slowly, as if gravity had increased without warning. "You okay?" she asked, surprised by the sincerity in her own voice. "Yes," he said automatically. Then, after a pause, "No, but I will be." He went upstairs without another word. That sentence stayed with her. I will be. Not hopeful, not despairing, certain. Later, she went into the study to return a book she had borrowed weeks ago. The room still smelled faintly of Marcus. Cedar, coffee, something clean and restrained. She placed the book on the shelf, then noticed the manila envelope half hidden beneath a stack of old project files. Her name was on it. She stared at the envelope for a long moment, her pulse loud in her ears. She told herself not to open it. She told herself that privacy, however fractured, still mattered. Her hand moved anyway. Inside were photocopied documents, bank statements, emails printed and highlighted with meticulous care. At the center of it all was a single letter, unsigned. Evelyn. I didn't know how to tell you. I still don't. I only know I couldn't continue pretending this wasn't real. Her breath caught. The documents told a story Marcus had never spoken aloud. Years ago, nearly 4 according to the dates, there had been a financial settlement. Quiet, substantial, paid monthly, then in a lump sum, to a woman named Rachel Monroe. Evelyn sank into the chair. The emails were worse. Rachel had been a junior associate at Marcus's firm, brilliant, ambitious, struggling financially. The correspondence began professionally. Feedback on designs, encouragement, late-night revisions. Gradually, the tone shifted. Not overtly sexual, not explicit enough to condemn without context, but intimate, familiar, loaded. Then came the rupture, an HR investigation, allegations never formally filed, a resignation framed as a career pivot, the settlement sealed with non-disclosure agreements, and silence. Marcus had stayed, Rachel had disappeared. Evelyn felt dizzy. The room tilted, reassembled itself around this new information. Her first instinct was fury, not at Marcus's actions, but at the symmetry of it all. You did this too. But even that thought faltered under scrutiny. There was no evidence of an affair in the conventional sense, no declarations of love, no stolen weekends, just a power imbalance, emotional reliance, a line crossed because no one stopped it soon enough. Marcus had not cheated. He had compromised. When he came downstairs an hour later, Evelyn was still there, the envelope open on the table. He stopped short when he saw it. "You went through my things?" he said. "Yes." The word was steady. It surprised them both. "How long were you going to keep this from me?" she asked. His shoulders sagged as if something he had been holding upright finally collapsed. He pulled out a chair and sat across from her. "Forever," he said. "Or until it no longer mattered." "It matters now," she said. "It matters because you looked at me like I was the only one who failed." "I never said that." "You didn't have to." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. "What I did wasn't an affair." "I know," Evelyn said. "That's almost worse." He flinched. "I didn't touch her," he said quietly. "I didn't sleep with her. But I let myself be needed in a way that wasn't appropriate. I liked the way she looked at me. I didn't stop it soon enough. And then you paid her to disappear." "I paid for my silence as much as hers." Evelyn laughed, then a sharp, incredulous sound that startled even her. "So you do understand?" "Yes," Marcus said. "That's the problem." She stood pacing the room. You knew what it felt like to cross a line, to justify it, to tell yourself it wasn't really betrayal. He watched her without interrupting. "And when you saw me," she continued, voice shaking, "you didn't just see a cheating wife. You saw a mirror." "Yes." The admission landed softly, devastating in its honesty. "That's why you smiled," she whispered. Marcus didn't deny it. "I smiled because I finally understood how easy it is to become someone you don't recognize." Evelyn stopped pacing. She looked at him not as the wounded husband or the silent judge, but as a man carrying his own buried failures. Her sense of moral clarity dissolved. She was not the sole villain of this story, but neither was she innocent. "What happened to her?" Evelyn asked. "Rachel." Marcus hesitated. "She moved to Seattle, started her own practice. I check occasionally. She seems fine." "You check?" Evelyn repeated. "Yes," he said, "because some debts don't expire." They sat in silence, the rain outside filling the space neither of them could. For the first time since the cafe, Evelyn felt something close to equilibrium. Not forgiveness, not absolution, but complexity. She had wanted Marcus to be purely wrong so she could be purely guilty, or purely forgiven. Instead, they were both compromised. "I don't know what this means for us," she said finally. Marcus nodded. "Neither do I. But now I understand." "The smile," she said. He looked at her, then really looked at her, as if seeing her again under altered light. "It wasn't punishment," he said. "It was recognition." That night they did not touch, they did not argue, they did not reconcile. But for the first time in months they spoke until dawn about fear, about power, about the quiet ways people betray themselves long before they betray others. When morning came, nothing was resolved. Yet something fundamental had shifted. Evelyn realized that love, stripped of illusion, did not become simple. It became honest. And honesty, she was learning, was far more dangerous than anger ever could be. Time did not heal them. It reorganized them. 3 years passed, not dramatically, not with clean breaks or definitive endings, but in increments so small they were almost merciful. Marcus and Evelyn remained married on paper long after they stopped living like a couple. The house on West Superior Street was sold quietly, assets divided with the same careful civility that had come to define their interactions. They no longer argued, they no longer pretended. What lingered between them was something thinner than love and heavier than indifference: memory. Marcus moved to a smaller apartment overlooking the river, all concrete and glass, intentionally temporary. Evelyn stayed in the city but changed neighborhoods, chasing the illusion that distance could also be internal. They spoke occasionally, birthdays, paperwork, the rare logistical necessity, but never about what had ended them, until the night it finally surfaced. It was late autumn when Evelyn saw his name on her phone again, unexpectedly intimate in its familiarity. Can we talk? No explanation, no urgency, just the question. She stared at the screen longer than she meant to before replying, yes. They met at a quiet bar near the river, the kind that favored low lighting and conversations that didn't want witnesses. Marcus arrived first, as he always had. He stood when she approached, hesitating for a fraction of a second, before leaning in for a restrained, almost ceremonial hug. "You look well," he said. "So do you." Both were true in the way truths often were, now surface deep, carefully maintained. They sat across from each other, a small table between them. For a while they talked about safe things, work, the city, mutual acquaintances whose lives had continued without pause. It felt surreal, like rehearsing a scene long after the audience had left. Finally, Marcus said, "I'm moving." Evelyn's fingers tightened around her glass. "Out of the city?" "Out of the country," he replied. "Copenhagen, a long-term project." She nodded slowly. "That's big." "It is." She waited. She had learned patience the hard way. "There's something I should tell you before I go," Marcus said. The words landed with a familiar weight. Evelyn felt a dull pressure behind her ribs. Not panic exactly, recognition. "Okay," she said. He didn't speak immediately. His gaze drifted to the window where city lights fractured against the dark water. "When I smiled," he began that day at the cafe. It wasn't the whole truth. Evelyn inhaled sharply, the smile still. Always. "I know," she said quietly. "Nothing ever is." Marcus nodded. There was more. He turned back to her. In the dim light, she could see the lines time had carved into his face. Not bitterness, but consequence. "I had already decided to leave," he said. Not immediately, not dramatically, but I had been preparing myself for months. Evelyn felt something cold bloom in her chest. Before Noah. Yes. The admission rearranged her understanding with brutal efficiency. "I didn't know how to tell you," Marcus continued. "I was waiting for the right moment, or maybe I was waiting for something to justify the decision." She stared at him. "So when you saw me, it confirmed what I was already avoiding." The bar noise faded into something distant and irrelevant. "You let me believe I destroyed us," she said. "I let you believe you revealed us," Marcus replied gently. "There's a difference." Evelyn's throat tightened. "That smile," she whispered, "it ruined me." "I know," he said, his voice cracked for the first time, "and I'm sorry for that." The apology arrived years too late to save anything, but not too late to hurt. "I spent so long thinking I was the villain," Evelyn said, "and maybe I was. But you never told me you were already halfway gone." Marcus's hands folded together on the table, precise even now. "If I had told you, you might have tried to fix it." "And you didn't want that?" "I didn't trust that fixing it wouldn't mean losing myself again." The honesty was devastating in its calmness. Evelyn laughed softly, tears threatening. "So we both betrayed something." "Yes." "What were you hoping this conversation would do?" she asked. Marcus considered this. Nothing redemptive. She appreciated that. "Then why now?" "Because I didn't want to leave carrying a lie that still belongs to you." The words settled between them. Evelyn thought of all the nights she had replayed the past, searching for a moment she could undo. She thought of how the smile had followed her into new relationships, new rooms, new versions of herself. "I wish you had been angry," she said. "Anger would have ended." Marcus nodded. "I know." They sat in silence then, not the hostile silence of before, but something quieter, finite. "I don't forgive you," Evelyn said eventually, "not fully. I wouldn't ask you to, but I don't hate you either." "That's more than I expected." She looked at him, really looked, and saw a man she had loved deeply, imperfectly, and too late. "When you smiled," she said, "I thought it meant I didn't matter." Marcus met her gaze. "It meant you mattered too much for me to lie anymore." They stood soon after. No promises, no closure dressed up as peace. Outside, the air was sharp with cold. Marcus hesitated, then extended his hand. Evelyn took it briefly, a touch that acknowledged history without reclaiming it. "Take care, Marcus." "You too, Evelyn." As she watched him walk away, this time without a smile, Evelyn understood something she hadn't before. Confrontations, when delayed too long, don't heal. They clarify. And clarity, like truth, does not redeem. It simply remains. The divorce was finalized on a Wednesday. It arrived in Evelyn's inbox without ceremony. An email notification, a PDF attachment, a subject line that read like a formality rather than the conclusion of a life. She opened it at her kitchen counter, sunlight spilling across the floor of an apartment that still felt temporary even after 2 years. She signed where she was told to sign. No tears came. That surprised her more than anything else. Marcus had already left the country, Copenhagen last she heard. A clean city, he'd said once. Thoughtful architecture. A place that valued restraint. It felt fitting in a way she refused to romanticize. They did not speak after that last meeting by the river. No final check-in, no acknowledgement of the paperwork's emotional weight. Some endings, Evelyn had learned, did not require witnesses. Life moved forward because it always did. Her career recovered first, publicly at least. She rebuilt her professional identity with the precision of someone who understood narrative better than truth. New clients, new headshots, a carefully worded bio that suggested growth without revealing cause. Friends praised her resilience. "You seem lighter," they said. She smiled when appropriate. She dated again, not recklessly, not with hope. Men came and went, each offering a version of connection that felt provisional, conditional. Some were kind, some were attentive. None unsettled her. What unsettled her was quiet. Moments when she caught her reflection unexpectedly in elevator mirrors, in darkened windows, and saw not the woman she had become, but the one frozen in that cafe, staring through glass at a man who knew her too well. The smile followed her everywhere. It appeared in dreams, always out of context. Marcus standing in unfamiliar rooms. Marcus across crowded streets. Marcus turning to leave, calm and certain, his expression unchanging. She woke from those dreams with a familiar tightness in her chest. Not longing, not regret. Recognition. Once, during a late-night work event, a colleague leaned toward her and said, "You have the strangest expression sometimes, like you're remembering something no one else can see." Evelyn laughed it off, but it was true. The smile had become a private language between her past and present selves, a reminder of the exact moment illusion collapsed without spectacle. No shouting, no begging, just understanding, delivered gently and irrevocably. Years later, she ran into someone who knew Marcus. "He seems happy," they said casually. "Settled." Evelyn nodded. "I'm glad." And she was, truly. But happiness, she understood now, was not the opposite of damage. It was simply what grew around it. On the anniversary of the cafe day, though she never admitted she remembered it, Evelyn walked along the river alone. The city had changed. New buildings, new lights. The water moved as it always had, indifferent to narrative. She stopped and looked at her reflection in the dark surface. For the first time, she didn't flinch. She thought about who she had been, how easily she had mistaken desire for aliveness, attention for intimacy. She thought about Marcus, not as the man who left, but as the man who saw clearly enough to stop pretending. The smile was not cruelty. It was closure without permission. Evelyn understood then what had haunted her all along. Not that Marcus had walked away, but that he had done so without needing her to become better first. Some moments did not fade because they were not mistakes. They were revelations. She turned from the river and continued walking, her pace unhurried, her posture finally her own. The marriage had ended. The story, however, remained quiet, internal, permanent. And somewhere within her, the memory of that smile settled into something no longer sharp, but still unmistakable. A mark, a lesson, a legacy.